Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 11 of the anime series Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans. And I think one of the predominant things I'm kind of left with by the end of this episode is this sense of, wow, what a small universe we all happen to be living in. With the events of this episode, I mean, it's sometimes somewhat problematic, especially in a sort of highfalutin sci-fi fantasy framework, to dwindle everything down into one sort of egg box, when you're trying and dealing with a universe that is so expansive and so awe-inspiring in just how far-reaching it can go. Dealing with a futuristic society like, in Iron-Blooded Orphans, where we're dealing with a colonized Mars that is seeking independence and sort of a revolution if, things don't go as buttery smooth as they hope it will. The entire point of Tekkadan going to Earth, bringing Cordelia, trying to fight for Martian rights, if you will. And now, if you think of a grand sort of sci-fi saga fantasy like Star Wars, if you look at all 6 of those films, you basically follow Anakin Skywalker in the prequel trilogy, who was the creator of C-3PO, a character that had been very much predominant in the original trilogy, which was set timeline-wise after the prequels and everything like that, and just sort of making everything much smaller in scope, much more tied to the Skywalker family. Having the chief villain, Darth Vader, be the creator of C-3PO is kind of gobsmacking. It's kind of like, huh? And in this episode, do we very much kind of have that same sense, that same flavor of what a small world, because of course one episode after we learn entirely about the back history of Akihiro and how his brother was lost to him and he's seeking his brother, and we're basically given the tease that we're going to be entering the pirate lanes and everything. Well, lo and behold, as coincidence would have it, the very pirates they come under the attack from, the Brewers, this pirate syndicate, is the very same that Masahiro, his brother, is attached to. And oh, by the way, adding further insult to injury in that small world scope, do we have them, facing off against each other in Mobile Suit Battle in this particular sequence? And it was just like, how convenient that the brother shows up at this point. It did add a certain level of emotion to that entire battle, especially when you're seeing that, Mikazuki, as we were left off in the previous episode, he comes in as the cavalry at that last second and sends old man back. And, he can't pilot his part of the vessel that gets him there speedily enough in time. And then, of course, he has the killing blow with this giant, dagger or blade, whatever it is. And that was all kinds of badass, I gotta admit. But I was just kind of the whole time I'm thinking, oh, there's kind of a reunification happening here for Akihiro with his brother, and his brother's suddenly dealing with that internal conflict. How can I continue this battle? How can I take Takaki, not knowing who he is, but take him hostage, take a hostage, when I've just found my brother? And, all of that. There were shades of very compelling story going on there, but I just couldn't help but think, wow, this is really convenient. All of a sudden, here's his brother. We just found out about him. Here he is. And the sort of lasting effect of the episode that played into how it all culminates is still very much sort of, responding to that idea that Akihiro still considers himself to be human debris. And I loved how they kind of flip it. Oruga, he knows how Akihiro is. And even Mikazuki knows how he is, and he says, this is kind of uncharacteristic for you, but it's really not. It's more so that, no, we want you to feel better. You're not alone in this anymore. They keep having to, extend that olive branch of brotherly love, of familial love. We're all in this together. It affects us all, not just you singularly. Don't hold that burden internally to yourself. We're all brothers here. We're all family here. And when everyone else is there and you have Akihiro just sort of taken aback, somewhat relieved, somewhat shocked, reluctant though he may be to, have that burden, if you will, be, corresponding to everyone, but still he feels that sense of brotherhood. And that's very much what made up for any sort of plot convenience, contrivance that I felt in finding Masahiro is here with these pirates, and the idea that this is a concurring, sort of threat. It's not done. It's going to be continuing into the next episode, and we have this guy, the leader, Kudal Kadal or whatever, sort of a Puri prisoner descendant, if you watch One Punch Man, being very much the bully, and you see that Masahiro can't even sort of reveal, it's a contrast between his pirate faction and the Tekadon boys. You have Akihiro revealing all, that this is his brother. He found his brother. That's why he had to dial it back. That's why he's kind of feeling responsible for what happened to Takaki. But on the other side of the page, do we have this pirate faction, the Brewers, and this, Kudal guy is beating the hell out of Masahiro. But then Masahiro, even among his peers, even among the guys who wish they could have stopped Kudal, he can't bring it up to them, because you got the one sort of, ringleader guy with the little flame of red in his hair or whatever it is, basically saying, like, I want to get revenge. They killed one of our boys. They killed Pedro. We got to get him, And so Masahiro, that's quite compelling that he can't be open. I mean, I'm sure he will in time. Maybe it'll be in the midst of another battle where they're going up against Tekadon once again, and he'll be, just sort of letting himself get killed, because he doesn't want to harm his brother, potentially, or his brother's friends, friends in arms, whatever it is. And that, to me, is quite compelling. What will play out of this convenience and contrivance is what's going to have me utmost compelled by it and intrigued by it. And, of course, we see that, Takaki was actually saved by Meribit, which was a surprise. Meribit being, very much, as, Naze basically has told us, she can pretty much do anything, She's adaptable. She has all these kinds of skills. And she kind of sort of, I thought it was really interesting that she rails Orga for going on this interplanetary crusade of a sort, and you didn't take a doctor with you. Like, it's kind of elementary that you should have that, even Naze himself, when Orga brings up being sort of taken aback by that, Naze's like, well, she's right. Where were the turbines in that equation? Why didn't they bring a doctor, But I understand Orga has to be the leader. He has to find his way. And it's a lesson learned. And when you find out that, basically the Brewers they're gunning for Cordelia. They've gotten the awareness of Cordelia. And I like how they, the Gallahorn guys call him Little Mustache. Whatever. Most notably, Toto, or whatever his name was, is responsible for giving them the heads up, knowing where Tekadon is, knowing where the turbines are, and, it just gets that much more complicated knowing that these pirates now have the heads up, and they're going to be gunning for Cordelia, just like Gallahorn was. Like, adding that much more insult to injury to the overall quest to get to Earth. Now we got to deal with pirates. They're not just looking for the loot like average pirates would be. They want, pointedly, Cordelia, because of that chess piece she represents. And as we follow up, going back to Earth, I was absolutely mesmerized by seeing futuristic Earth and sort of how ass backwards, as I say, it is. As you have, Farid and Balduin being congratulated for what they were able to do, even though Cordelia slipped through their fingers, that's sort of a underridden factor in that whole equation. And when we go back to the one guy's house and we meet the little sister who, it's an arranged marriage, and it's like, yeah, okay, pedophile much? It's just really, that kind of set me off guard, like, wow, this is really, if they want to play up how sort of abnormal the earthly government is, and how the situation, the living situation is on Earth, they perfectly embodied it there. Here's this little girl, and she can't wait to marry this guy, and he seems as psyched about it as she is, and it's just like, no. Okay, but no. And of course, that sort of adversarial thing between she and her brother, just, I don't know. But spelling out the nature of what their sort of driving force is now, through the course of their dialogue, talking about having sought out and smoked out, effectively, corrupt individuals within the Gallahorn, sort of dynamic, within that earthly governmental dynamic, and they want to do this more. They want to expound upon this idea. and really sort of shake things up, get their hands on Cordelia so they can use her, manipulate her, to then manipulate the grander scope of things, and, you know, sort of deal a crushing blow to the internal nefarious machinations. It's like, you know, are these good guys or bad guys? It's kind of gray area, and I kind of like that. I like that there isn't any cut and dry good versus evil scenario going on here. But it does kind of lend me to be confused as to, okay, well, why are they thinking about doing that? And then we have Ein, you know, being bullied by some of his fellow Galahorn cahoots, if you will, or cohorts, you know. And it's interesting because we find out he is actually from Mars. I don't remember if this was something that was stated previously. I was kind of surprised by it at this point, like, oh, he is from Mars. And it's very interesting how much of a vendetta he has for the loss of Crank, you know, and he knows full-bloodedly that these are people from his home planet. And he's that much more out for blood. It's almost like he's completely, you know, just been overcome by whatever earthly governmental Galahorn brainwashing is in work for these troops, for these soldiers, and that much more adds to the compelling nature. So, I mean, this was definitely an interesting episode. Definitely multifaceted. Maybe a little too convenient for me, maybe a little too contrived for me in places, but what was born out of it, what was spelled out from those convenient plot, you know, devices, was that much more engaging and, you know, compelling for me as a viewer, and just has me really curious to see where this is going to go. I was really afraid Takagi was going to die in this episode, and this was going to be the first divisive blow, especially with the title being Human Debris. It was going to be the first blow that Orga and crew would have to suffer. And conveniently enough, they made it out happily ever after, sort of. You know, like, Takagi does survive for the moment. But it does once again hint at that oncoming storm of heartbreak that is potentially going to be set in the futures of these orphans. And they're going to hold on as tightly as they can to each other. But is there really any hope of success, is the question. Are they going to successfully get to Earth? Are they going to be able to jump those hurdles from the pirates to Galahorn to whatever else might get in their way? And are they going to be able to bring Cordelia to Earth and successfully sort of just, you know, make the argument for Mars, for the case of Mars having its independence? Is that even a you know, realistic goal for this crew at this point? Maybe this story is going to be more about the journey to try to get there rather than actually getting there, and all the tumultuous trials and tribulations they're going to be experiencing on that quest. In any case, great episode, fantastic characterization, born out of plot contrivances aplenty, at least one big one. But yeah, bring on the next. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 11 of Iron-Blooded Orphans, if you've seen it, if you were compelled as I was, if you thought it was convenient as I did, you know, that Masahiro showed up when he did, and they run smack dab into the very pirates that the brother's with and all that stuff. An episode after debuting all this information to us. Go figure. But still, I found it entirely enjoyable and captivating. And as I say, I'd love to hear from you. So otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.